Welcome to the Bookish Spell, your cozy corner for all things bookish. I'm Angie, your host, and each week I'll be diving into the magical world of books, sharing reviews, author interviews, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday, so grab a cup of coffee and get ready to turn the page with me.
All right, Scott. Well, welcome on.
Thank you.
Glad to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you too, and I appreciate the opportunity. I really do.
Yeah. So start off by telling us a little bit about your book. And I know you're writing, this is a trilogy, your first book, or?
Yes, it is definitely a trilogy. And I'm in the second one right now.
Nice.
Probably a quarter of the way through though. So not still building and developing.
Right.
That I'm hoping to have, I would say, the sequel out probably by summer of next year is my goal.
Good. Well, tell us about your current book that's out. The name of it.
Did you get the one that it didn't arrive yesterday? Okay, I'll have to track that. Interesting. So yes, let me tell you about the book. So I got it here. It's called The First 30 Days. It is available on Amazon, also Kindle and Barnes and Noble. That's where you can purchase it.
Beautiful.
So I did self-publish. I will admit I tried the traditional route. I really wanted an agent and I wanted that big marketing budget, but I got some good feedback from some I thought I was going to get, and got my hopes up and it didn't work out. But they gave me the feedback I needed as far as if I want to get an agent, this is how we want it to look. So what I did after I got all that feedback, I took all their feedback, I changed what I needed to, and I never went back to them. I just said, forget it. They gave me the good feedback. Now I'm just going to self-publish.
Nice. So my question to you is, how did you get your books into Barnes and Noble? Do you just contact them and they will put your books, or how does that happen with self-publish?
So it's not actually in Barnes and Noble. Let me rephrase that. No, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble websites.
Oh.
So now I've learned that you can get those into those places just by contacting them, but you got to have a good following, or you've got to have a certain amount of sales so they can see that it's something that will sell. So in the beginning, I found like this book took me forever to write, and that was just because I don't have education. I didn't go to school for journalism or creative writing. I have an MBA, but that doesn't make me a writer, right? I have a graduate degree, but and that helps with research and stuff, but not writing. So it took me almost 7 years to complete this book to where I felt like it was ready to be shared. And that's a lot to do with it's a very personal book because it is inspired by events from my past, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
story?
What's that?
Is it a fictional story just inspired by your...
Yes, exactly.
I read it.
So the Barnes and Noble thing and getting your name out there, when you self-publish, like I use Palmetto Publishing, which is a good publishing company.
Okay.
And they have packages you can buy, you pay for advertising and marketing. I've succeeded in the sales management industry, so I thought I could do this, but it's a different game. It's a different game. Social media, it's doing book signings, it's a totally different game. So the second book, I'm going to try traditional again and see if they will grab it. But if not, then I will publish all three, just self-publish.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Barnes and Noble thing was interesting because I feel like maybe not a lot of self-published authors know about that.
Right.
Because you're the first that has said anything about that. So I feel like that would be helpful for other listeners. I do have quite a few like writers, inspiring writers, new writers that do get a lot of insight from listening to you guys speak. So that is really helpful.
What I think just you saying that would be helpful is I probably need to converse with more writers out there that are going through the same thing, because we're all learning at the same time. And if we combine our efforts and do a little teamwork, we can figure it out maybe quicker, right?
Yeah,
it's hard when you write a book and you think, man, this was one of the hardest, things I've done. And then you get there and you're done and you're like, oh my gosh, but this is so much harder to get it out there. It's a lot, but but I believe in my book. It's my first book, so I think I have better ones to come, I'll say. I think I did a good enough job, and I think people will enjoy it. But I think by writing over that 7 years of learning and trying to figure out how to do it right, taking feedback as I got it, educating myself on the writing process, reading like 40 books in a year just to understand their writing process and try to take from anything I can that teaches me. But now that I have all that knowledge, now I feel like it's going to be much easier. The second book has been much easier than the first. I'll tell you that much.
That's good to hear. Well, congratulations on that. Yeah, that's beautiful. But yeah, I would suggest connecting with other authors. Just from my short time of doing these interviews, that is a lot of what I hear the authors talk about is building a community with the other authors does help them with, whatever questions they have, help them through their journey, help them with their writing, help them with their marketing. So I feel like they get a lot of their questions answered. There's actually was one lady that I spoke to a few weeks ago. She wrote a book and she did self-publish. She actually has a podcast too. I think it's called Indie Author Podcast. So she does a lot of yeah, but she has, a podcast you could stream. I'll message it.
Oh, gotcha. Do that. Yeah.
Listen to all the other authors.
Great. That's great.
A lot more seasoned than mine. But my point is that she built this little community and she got her book, had friends edit it for free. I believe somebody created the book cover for her for free.
Oh, and that's great.
Prepared the whole thing for her to be able to self-publish it.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing that. I love hearing people helping each other.
Yeah, so like from what I gather, it's like the writer community is really like ride or die. Like they're really nice.
So I need to get into that. I know. So my problem is so I have a business called ST Consulting. I started that a year and a half ago. It's business management and leadership, training, coaching.
Nice.
I have one client though that I started June of last year, and I started with this client, this big client, and I became an acting chief operating officer while we did all that. So acting because I'm still consulting and I'm helping this company grow and become successful. But the ultimate goal is to help a lot of different companies with consulting, with writing, just with being better people and, recovery and leadership. But so that takes up a lot of, point of the story is it takes up a lot of time. So, when I'm doing social media or I'm trying to advertise, I'm trying to do these things I think might work, it's on the weekends, it's at night, and I have a lot of responsibility at work. So it's kind of exhausting. So I wish I had more time to do that stuff. And I have to, if I want this to be successful, right? You just got to put in the time. And I know I need to quit watching football on the weekends and be talking to writers around.
You're right. It's all about prioritizing, but get there.
But good feedback and thank you for that contact, because that could be wonderful for me and all of us.
Yeah, I'll definitely send it to you.
Thank you.
All right. I want to know, what is your book about? Like, what type of genre is it?
That's important, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the book. So the book the genre is romance, contemporary romance, or it could be a supernatural romance. But the book is about much more than romance. The main storyline is a fictional line, like I said, but it's inspired by true events. So Garrett and Aubrey are the main characters, and then Garrett's daughters, Jasmine and Alexa. So there's other characters, but those are the main ones. Jasmine and Alexa. I have two daughters, and so some of these experiences. Yeah. So some of the things, they live in Connecticut. I'm in Idaho. I'm in Nampa, Idaho. Some of the things that the character did with his daughters were inspired by things I did with my daughters, right? So it's a story of romance of a guy that loses everything, has an alcohol problem, does have a alcohol-related accident where his best friend's life is taken, and he is to blame, even though it was somebody else's fault because he had been drinking. He got charged and had to go to prison in due time. That didn't happen to me, so that's fictional.
I got it.
But I do have an alcohol problem. I'm an alcoholic, which I'm in recovery. I've been sober for some time now, which has been great. And that's another thing I'm very passionate about, is helping others. But I did do time for a bar fight. I lost 2.5 years of my life. But anyways, back to the story, and we can get into that. But so he loses everything, loses his wife. They get divorced. His family. He meets somebody in prison that becomes his mentor for recovery, and that relationship blossoms. And then he gets out and he does meet Aubrey, and the romance blossomed there. I'm a hopeless romantic, so I think some people that like thrillers or other action movie or stories, they might be like, oh my gosh, you're so gushy in here. Might get a little bored, but if you're a romance lover, then you'll love it.
Yeah.
But it's about the romance. It's about a father-daughter relationship, about a guy trying to find his way back and crawl out of a big pit he dug for himself. And it's about finding a higher power, which I call God, and so does Garrett. And learning to trust in that higher power to deal with mental health issues, deal with consequences like a felony and trying to get employment, and the things that Garrett had to go through to find his way back is what this story's about. So it's a journey about recovery, romance, rebuilding relationships with your daughters. And in the end, there's more to it, and I don't want to give it away, but it's also got a pretty good twist.
Well, I'm going to check my mailbox after this. Hopefully it's in there today.
I did, and they told me it'd be there by Tuesday, so I'm surprised. So I have the receipt. I could track it. I assumed that you had got it since I didn't hear anything. So my bad.
I would have told you. It might be in there, and they might have delivered it late, and I didn't know. So I'll check it after this. But I'm excited to read that. That sounded really beautiful. And I love hearing these kind of stories of like authors creating these stories around their life experience, because I feel it's like a part of you, almost like just accepting what happened, releasing that so you can start like a new chapter in your actual life.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful thing to really put that down on paper for the world to read, and then you can just focus on building your new life, So
you're so right
on that.
Thank you. You bring up a great point. It's so therapeutic for me. I guess I'll say one thing that's interesting about this book. So like I said, I got in trouble for a bar fight. I got an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, a bar fight that got out of hand and ended up outside of part of it wasn't my fault, but I take responsibility for it all because I was involved. I was acting irresponsibly.
Right.
So I when I wrote this first draft of this novel, I was in jail at the Canyon County Jail. It was my third time in. I was on a parole violation. I'd get out and I'd try to get sober, and I'd start working a program, and I'd figure it out, and then I'd just fall off. Something would throw me off and send me spiral, and I'd end up back in. This time I was facing a battery on an officer because when I got arrested at the hospital, my dad was trying to check me into for to sober up for rehab. I apparently allegedly kicked an officer and then kicked an officer in the jail. So I was facing 5 more years on top of the 2 years I would have to do.
Goodness.
And so that's when, I was humbled the other times, but this is when I really had to look at my life and say, you got to fix something, Scott, because you're going to just be in here forever, or you're going to really hurt someone. And you're going to have to live with that, or you're just going to die from alcoholism. Right. So I started writing because I needed to heal. And that's really, that's really where it started, right? It's where I started to identify, what happened in my life? Where did it go wrong? Why am I so fearful of things? Why do I have so much anxiety? What mask am I putting on to face the world, and why? Right. And man, the last 2 years, I faced those things, and what a beautiful thing healing is, and writing has helped create that path for healing. Right. So yeah, beautiful thing. And I'm glad to hear that other people do that too, to help them, because that's some powerful stuff, healing stuff that you can't really get anywhere else sometimes.
Yeah.
It's all internal.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad that you're on a better path.
Thank you. Me too.
And I hope you forgive yourself for the version you was in the past.
Right.
Because I feel like, when you have those negative choices, we don't just kind of always go into it being like, well, you know what? I want to make bad choices today. It just kind of happens, gets the best of us. I hope you forgive
Right.
yourself for the version that you were, because I feel like you're in a better place now.
That's it, and that's so important. Yeah, you beat yourself up, you're never going to heal or grow or change, because if you're your worst enemy like I used to be,
Yeah.
then man, it's a bad spot to be in.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. I talk with a lot of people that were in your same position, because not many people know this, but by night I read books and I run a podcast. By day, I am a life coach and I read tarot cards.
Oh, great. I love that. That's a great profession. My consulting company, I kind of see it more as I want to help and coach people, right? That's part of it that I love about it later on, when I can do that with more people. I love the people I'm working with, 25 people, right? And I love them. They're growing, they're changing. We have just, it's been an amazing thing to see. But to open it up to even a bigger audience, because that's, like, you could tell if you're a life coach, you get that joy from serving others, right? Servant leadership approach, and me too. So good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. Yes, it definitely brings a lot of happiness to watch these people as an individual make the progress, make the change. And like, I have people that will come in weekly or whatever, or call me weekly, and we'll discuss problems. And it's just like amazing to me watching how, if someone just has a little bit of encouragement, how much they can grow,
Right.
So I do love what I do, because I love watching those people just have the encouragement they need to make the changes in their life.
Right. Yeah. That's got to be very rewarding.
It is, definitely is. So I am a little bit curious. Before you started writing, like, I know you started writing because of everything you've been through, but did you have any like thought or need to write prior to all that had taken place, or this was just like an epiphany that happened and you started writing?
So that's a great question. You've obviously done this a few times, so good job. I'm glad somebody's prepared. So when I was probably 8 years old, I had this fantasy about hitting the Grand Slam and the World Series, like, just to happen, with the Dodgers. And I couldn't get out of my head. I love movies. I loved books. So I was like, I'm going to write a book. I can do this. I have this big idea and I have all this stuff I could write. Well, I think it was like 8 or 10 pages, right? And that was all I had. And so I was so disappointed. And I was just like, this is hard. So I never really thought about it again until so when I was from the age of like 19 to 31, I was in the telecommunications industry, and I was a district director and a leader, and I loved self-help books. So at that point, I saw myself someday, when I had arrived, whether a CEO or something of a big company, I'd write a book. I thought that would be awesome. So yeah, I had that desire then, but it wasn't until I got locked up and I screwed up, I started to read. And Nicholas Sparks really got me into fiction, because I love his books, and they helped me. They helped me a lot. They helped me heal. They were go-tos when I was locked up and felt hopeless and helpless, like I was never going to figure it out. He gave me hope. And so I think it was part healing, and it was part, I wanted to write a story like he does that can help other people and give them hope, like he did for me. So but it was never, I always had the path of leadership, and I'm going to run a big business or be this big company at some point, but that's all changed. I have a totally different perspective now. But I wish I would have known earlier on that I loved writing so much.
I'm glad that you discovered that. So kind of walk us through your writing process. Do you have any rituals, or do you just kind of write on the fly?
No, I love that you asked that for other people to learn, right? And I need to watch all of your stuff. So with my writing process, writing is not super easy. I can do it at any time and get lost into it. The problem with me though is, I have to work on a schedule. I have all this time and all these things I want to do. And when I get lost in writing, I could literally, and this is no joke, lose like 2 hours. And look at the clock and it's 8:30 in the morning or 6:30 in the morning, and not realize the time again until it's like 8:30. And that's awesome if you have a lot of time for that.
Yeah.
So my writing process is probably a little different, because it's not that I have all this time and I can just write and I just need to have this ritual every day. I wake up and I do it. I mean, I do have to have rituals where, on the weekends, I make it a priority to write, and I write as much as possible. The weekdays I take notes in a notebook. So when I'm at work, I'll have ideas that come up, and then when I write with pen and paper, it's a lot different. I have a lot more creative ideas. So I'll write those down, and then on the weekends, I'll compile all those and then come up with even more thoughts and ideas. So I guess you'd say I'm kind of a part-time writer. But I know it's hard to get motivated to write and to really sit down and do it. And I've found that I have to have complete silence.
Yeah.
I have to lock myself away. I have to, sometimes I listen to music like the Interstellar soundtrack, light music, kind of inspiring. That helps get it going. I personally like the mornings better than the evenings, because I'm just feel more spiritually in tune and awake, and maybe it's the caffeine. I don't know. But mornings for me are the best time to write. I mean, I'm the most creative, and for sure. But throughout the day, I feel like if I have my notebook and an idea comes and I think about it and think, oh, that's great, and I get it down on paper before I lose it, because I always think I'm going to remember that idea, and then later I'm like, what was I thinking of again? That's the most important thing. You get those ideas down on paper so you don't lose them, and then you can build off it later, even if you only get a little bit. Right.
Well, that's a pretty solid advice. I feel like, especially knowing that you kind of more so just write on the weekends, because I'll tell you why. A lot of the people I talk to, I feel like have like this guilt when they're not writing every day.
Yes.
And it makes them so like, I feel like it affects everything else in their life, because they feel like they need to be writing every day. But you kind of prioritizing just the weekends, I feel can be really helpful for others, me included. I'm saying that at least as long as you're just writing on the weekends, you're getting some words in, you're eventually going to complete it. And
yes.
So that's pretty helpful.
And if you're writing down all those ideas throughout the week,
exactly.
You're not just starting and sitting there, oh, what am I going to write? It's like, I have all these ideas to build off now. And then you can spend a half a day and get, way more done than you could have done if you sat down every day and made yourself do it. I understand though. I get the writer's guilt too. Like, I'm always thinking, if I'm doing this, I should be writing. This is free time. All my free time should be writing, but it's discipline. It's just like, I got to say, this is enough. If I don't do it on the weekend, then yes, I need to reprioritize. But as long as I get that done on the weekend, then I can feel satisfied that I accomplished my weekly goal. Make it a weekly goal, not a daily goal.
That's nice. I feel like that's pretty helpful. So since you finished your first book, and I'm sure you learned a lot from that, have you taken any like writing classes or read any books about writing to help with your second novel?
Yes. I haven't taken classes per se, but definitely done the internet education. So when I was submitting to traditional publishers or agents, one of them had like, I was reading through her message, and at first it was like, we love this, we love the storyline, we love where you're going with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, my heart sank. I was getting gas. I was like, I got one, but then it was like, and their feedback was that I tell more than I show. And so showing as far as being descriptive of what they're seeing, what they're feeling,
I think with that too. Okay.
Yeah, not just telling people, this is what I'm here, and not describing, well, where is here? You have it in your head, but they need to see where here is and feel it and smell it and touch it. So I took that feedback, and I did. I basically started to look at the books I was reading, like Nicholas Sparks, and said, okay, how is he showing versus telling? I have to admit, my education does come from the writers I admire. But how is he showing versus telling? How is he being descriptive? You know, how is he making me feel their emotions? How is he making me feel like I'm there? And really, you don't have to take a class. You know, it's really being more descriptive and showing to me is when I'm writing and I'm sitting here writing about this chair. Okay, it's not just the chair there. What else am I seeing? There's a lamp that's on. It's kind of dim in the room.
Right.
It's cloudy outside. I could see a tree branch moving. It's putting the writer into that perspective of the character. Now,
Yeah.
did I do that perfectly in this book? No. I tried, and like I said, I learned a lot, but I couldn't rewrite the book. You know,
No.
I did my best to show versus tell. I think there's still parts of it that I could have done better, but it's my first book. You know,
Yeah.
Nicholas he wrote 3 before he hit you know the Notebook. So I feel like it's just all a learning process, but I feel like I did my best to show. And for me, you know, I did read a lot on the internet about, like, I can't remember what I read, but there was some sort of paper that was put out there that talked about how to show versus tell. And like I just explained, when it went through, you know, the process of how you do that, it just all kind of clicked and made sense. And putting myself into the vision of the character, it's easy for me. And then just like a painter, just explaining what I see with words versus paint.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
But
I feel like, go ahead.
But I do feel like there's a balance. I feel like you can show too much, and that's what I have to be careful of. Is I think I could have went all the way on this end. There's a balance. You got to make it simple too. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess I noticed that, like, reading certain books, like, oh, so and so is holding the candle, the flame is flickering on the wall as you walk down the scary hallway. You know, it does paint the scene in your mind.
Right.
So I get it, and that's, I feel like, something I've always struggled with myself at writing, because I've been writing on and off pretty much since I was 16.
Oh wow.
I never hate anything. I'm always, like, too much in my head. I overthink, and I always just like, oh, this is terrible. No one's gonna read it, and I trash it, like, all the time. So I feel like maybe me being a little older and wiser,
Right.
soon I'll be able to actually start writing and just keep up with it. But just being like when I was back in my early 20s and teenager, it was difficult for me, because no matter how I wrote whatever stories in my mind, somehow I felt embarrassed of my words.
I get it. Totally.
I feel like being older, I don't feel like that no more. But I think that hindered me back then. I really felt embarrassed. And also growing up, I was homeschooled, and, you know, I just come from a really, like, different culture that I didn't really have all that opportunity to learn all that stuff growing up. So they didn't, when I was younger, there was no such thing of, like, Udemy and all these websites where you could just purchase a course and learn stuff, and, you know, Google and all that was, like, really new. So I didn't know all the stuff I know today, of course, when I was younger. If I had, like, the technology we had back when I was a teenager, I probably would have wrote a long time ago.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that. I agree.
So I don't know how the people done it back in the day, but
I know they had it a lot rougher than we did. That's for sure. Because we have so much more knowledge, and we have so much more we can learn these days. So much easier to learn.
Yep. I know this is a little off topic, but, you know, this Frankenstein, the story, and the lady who wrote it, her name was Mary Shelley. Did you know how that story was written?
Tell me. I know I've heard this before because I was impressed with the story, but I can't remember. So tell me.
It is something that I will never forget because it was amazing for me. It was her husband, and I forgot the actual, like, the book I was reading was actually about the guy, not Mary Shelley. There's actually a book called The Innovators. So it's about all these people, famous people that done something exquisite. I think his name was, like, Baron something. He was the father of Adelaide Lovelace, who created the first, like, computer. So Adelaide Lovelace's father, Baron whatever, I forgot his name. He went to, I guess he was close friends with Mary Shelley, which is the author of Frankenstein, and her husband. So he goes and visits them. and there ended up being like a storm, and they couldn't leave the house. They had to keep themselves busy. So they, to keep themselves busy, decided to do a contest for them to write a story, and whoever wrote the best story wins. She wrote her story. So Frankenstein is based off of her son who passed away. I don't remember if her son passed away at a young age, or I can't remember how he passed away. So she wrote the story based off of like essentially bringing her son back to life.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay.
So she wrote it purely just for fun, so to speak, because they was doing a contest, just them three, just to kill time. She wrote the story. They read it. Everyone's like jaw dropped because it was so good, and it ended up being published. And it's what we know and love today.
Right. That's great. I love that story.
I know, like it was so interesting.
And I'm sure if it was about her son, there was a healing journey for her, right? And it probably helped her.
Part, like it makes you like Frankenstein. I never read Frankenstein, honestly, but I've watched it a million different variations.
I don't think I've read it either. I definitely am interested in reading it now.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, I guess it is. I probably will read it too, because I don't know how far off the movies interpreted what the actual book said.
Right, and usually for me, the books are always so much better. So much better.
Yeah, but essentially it was about pain and sorrow. She was just really emotionally damaged from whatever happened to her son. And if she could have one thing happen, it would be to bring him back.
Wow, that puts a totally different spin on it. I think I've heard something about that before, because I remember thinking, Frankenstein? I would have never thought that was why. But that helps clarify that. So that's great. Yeah, I am going to read that. I am going to read that.
It's so interesting how that happens. But it just was like, she wrote it on a pen and paper and a contest, and now it's this, book that generations know. Amazing.
Some people just have that supernatural talent to write. I'm definitely not one of those. I feel like I have to work hard and make sure it sounds right and put in effort. But yeah, some people, just like anything, have that natural talent. Obviously she did, if she was able to write that quickly too.
Right? That's what I thought about too. Just for fun, just because it was storming outside and they didn't have TV or ability to watch YouTube.
I could see how writing stories would have been fun for people, because then they write it, you get to read it, you write it, they get it. Yeah, you got to entertain yourself, right?
Yeah.
Your mind is kind of your entertainment too, at that point.
I feel like a lot of the classic stories, their backstories of these classic stories are really something. That's one thing I do enjoy doing, is just like reading a little history of backstories. Like Peter Pan's one of my favorites. Peter Pan is, and here's the thing, I've never actually read any of these classic books. But
I read some of them, not all of them, but that I want to read. Throughout my life, I'd like to get most of them checked off. But Peter Pan was really good.
I never read it, but their backstory was good.
Oh, really?
Who created Peter Pan? Like it really, the kids were really based off of actual children. So it was a little bit creepy, I guess. Like today, that will definitely be like a red flag, and people won't allow this person in their family. They come their family.
Right.
So essentially, it was a family friend that used to just come over to this couple's house, and he used to go play in the backyard with the kids. He wasn't a relative. He was just a friend. The guy who wrote Peter Pan. They used to go play in the backyard with the kids, and their names were really John and Michael.
Oh,
And he used to tell them stories, and I guess they used to play pirates and all that outside. So he started to tell them stories and essentially end up writing it in a book, the story of what they used to do, play games, whatever, outside. And it became Peter Pan. And then whenever he died, I don't know if it was before or after he died, whatever it was, sold the rights to Peter Pan to a hospital, I believe in like London or something, in the United Kingdom. So that for so many years, now it's considered like what is that called? Where anybody can like write it, and it's not owned by nothing now.
Oh yeah, the trademark and copyrights all expired.
Yes. So for so long, it was owned by a hospital that had the rights to Peter Pan. So anybody who bought a copy or whatever, however that works, all of the money went to the hospital.
Mhm.
I thought that
Wow.
was a pretty,
Wow. Yeah, that is cool.
pretty interesting story, a
That is.
backstory of the story, you know?
Right. That
Like,
does make the story much
it
better.
makes it more interesting.
More interesting, more meaningful, right? Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Like if you just look up any old classic tale of how it was created, they all have some kind of super meaningful story, which I guess today people do too, much like your story. Like
Right.
Alice in Wonderland really is based off of an actual person
Mhm.
that really had what they call Alice in Wonderland syndrome. There's
Right.
another
I
medical
heard
term
about
for it.
that. Yep.
Winnie the Pooh.
Right. Yep. I knew that. I love that one. Yep. That was a good one.
Like all of them, like it just kind of amazes me. I don't know, like I geek out over that real bad.
I think when people write like me, when people
Mhm.
write about pasts or inspirations from something significant that happened in their life, I think they just have so much more passion about what they're writing, and they're more descriptive, and it's people get lost in it. Like you said, it's a healing journey.
Mhm.
But yeah, things from your life. For me, I know, some of the stuff I've healed from, those are vivid memories, and
Mhm.
the change from it, I think, and the things that happen throughout it, just give you that drive. Like you say, we feel guilty when we're not writing, whether you're just writing something totally made up or it's inspired by something. It's not we're feeling guilty about just not writing something down. We're feeling guilty about not working on ourselves, because writing requires you to, and not everybody does write about the things of their lives. But I do feel like the more meaningful ones
Oh,
usually have
definitely.
a story. Yep. Yep. There's
Mhm.
something to it. And usually there's just that different perspective when they're writing, because they could see it, they could feel it still, it's in their head. So they're more descriptive and more creative about it, because it's not coming up with something new. It's building off of something that,
Like, yeah,
is already in your mind.
yeah. I
At
feel
least
like
that is how it be.
I like a lot of people I feel do that. Most of the people I've spoken to so far on this podcast all write from personal
Experience.
experiences. Yep.
Right.
But this is also what I learned too, so I love doing these. Um, the personal experiences they go through literally could be a book about nothing that they went through. It's just meaningful for them. They take
Yep.
very bits and pieces, but they like camouflage it so good that you will never know that it's about that. Like I have this one friend, actually, I done an episode with her. I read her book and everything. It was amazing. And then like I hear the backstory. I'm like, okay, now I have to reread it over again because you gave
Yeah,
me
right. With that different perspective, you're right.
yeah,
Yep.
like you created this whole fantasy world. She wrote a big fantasy book, jumbo. And then she tells me like it was based off of past relationships. I'm like, like that went over my head. you know?
Right. Right.
That's something I learned too. That I just like some authors can really, really camouflage it to where you'll never know. And maybe that's something I should take into consideration for myself, since I feel so embarrassed to write my words, I guess. Maybe that's what other authors feel.
I trust me, putting out work, like that was
Mm,
part of the reason. I mean, part of the reason it took a while, but it makes you feel vulnerable. Like
yeah,
you're open to criticism, and you have
yeah,
these high hopes for it, and you feel all of this love for this story and passion. And now other people are going to either buy it or not and tell you if they like it or not. And scary. Trust me, for me, it's been a very interesting experience. And in the end, I guess I've told myself, even if a few versus many, like I was hoping, like it and get something out of it and relate with the characters and grow, that's so worth it. Trust me, I
mm,
want to be a bestseller. I would love to write for a career and just do, leadership seminars and writing novels and even self-help. But if not, even if this is the only book I write, if I help a few, it's worth it. It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it to me. I
mm,
want to say, when I think about, you asked the question about why I wrote it, and I want to answer that a little differently. Why did I write this book? So I already mentioned that I was serving time. I was at the lowest of my lows in life. Like I went from a director making, great money and had security and a wife and kids and a house with a pool to, 5 years later. Well, this was 7 years later, but I'd been dealing with crime, fighting at bars and the judicial system for 4 years. And so here I am 7 years later, sitting in jail facing a new charge. And, that's when the humility in 2017, that's when I humbled myself and gave things to my higher power, God, turned myself over to recovery and God first, and then recovery, and then everything else. And in that time, I was focused on spirituality and change and not making these mistakes. I was tired of hurting everybody around me, my daughters, everybody having to see me beat myself up and put myself through this nightmare. During that time of change, I had this fantasy about. So I had learned to play the piano before I started to get in trouble. And I loved it. I started on YouTube and just learned some songs, right? I loved it. So when I was doing time that time, like I could not wait to get out and play the piano. And I would sit there and, some of my friends make fun of me. I'd be in my head just playing what are, the notes. And so I'd fantasize about me and my daughters at a restaurant. And I'd have this over and over, because when you're doing time, you have a lot of time to think in your head. And I kept thinking about us being at dinner, this nice dinner here in Boise at Chandler's Restaurant. And they have a piano player, and the piano player becoming ill. And then my daughters saying, my dad can play, we want him to play. And me, definitely not one. That would be very hard for me to do in real life. But me going and doing it because I want to play two songs that are dedicated to them, to show that, because that's why Garrett learned how to play the piano, and that's why I learned how to play, was to express my love for my girls and other women, right, in my life, which I am engaged to an amazing woman named Michelle.
Good. Congratulations.
Yes, finally found that one, and so happy I did. But at the time I wasn't with anybody, so I fantasized about, meeting a lady. After I played for my girls, then there was a lady that somehow they meet from that and a romance sparks. And that's where I started. I started with that fantasy. I put it on paper. And then I built on that, and I built the whole story around that one scene. Yes. And then it became not just about my daughters and not just about finding romance again. It became about who do I want to become? Kind of father, kind of son, all these different roles. What kind of future husband, right? The way I'd been living, I wasn't doing well in those areas, and I knew it. And so I wrote this book about a guy that's in my position, but he's free now, and he's doing all these things I want to do with my life. And so, it's more than just a fictional journey. It is, I guess, a roadmap for me.
Exactly.
Now Garrett does get discovered. I will give you that at that restaurant he plays at. He gets discovered by an agent, and so there is a something that's totally fictional, where it spins off from there. So there is something that Garrett has an opportunity that isn't based on real life, and it's not based on anything I want to be. I don't want to be a singer. I don't want to be a musician. I love playing the piano. I love playing it, and it helps me in my recovery. It helps me get out of my head. It helps me control my anxiety and my mental health. It's one of my tools I use. But that's a total fiction. What happens with Garrett. But yeah, it is about a guy that's trying to rebuild his life, and so there is stuff that I think people will enjoy and give them hope that maybe that can happen to somebody with day and age we're in with technology, that you can get discovered. If you want to be a singer, if you want to be a writer, if you want to do these things, we have the technology that can do that these days. And it's amazing.
It really is amazing what the internet and social media can do for people that change their life around. This is around about one of my favorite videos of this year. Is actually hilarious. It's like an older lady. She puts a boiled egg in the microwave to warm it up, and it explodes in the microwave. didn't see the video like when it is.
I heard about this.
So how I found out about this egg video is that I guess she made follow-up videos, and on TikTok I finally see her video. She's on this yacht with all of her friends, and like she's saying in the video, thanking everybody. Who would have thought that me putting an egg in the video, not knowing it will explode, would cause me to live this life that I'm living today? I'm like,
so because it went viral, she was just doing really well now, huh?
Yeah, I guess she got like sponsors, and I don't know how that all works.
That is crazy, and it's exciting to me because I see the trend. I see the trend with social media that it's not just becoming a personal page; it's becoming a business for everybody who wants to do something with their life. They want to sell something, they want to make something. Now they have the power to do that, and so people got to get on board with social media. I did too. I wasn't on TikTok 6 months ago. I recently got on TikTok. I recently started to do the social media stuff. I was working on Facebook, but and I have a Facebook page, but I have a ST consulting page on Facebook that I'm just starting to build. But social media is so important. It is your own business if you want it to be, right? It's a way to promote yourself, and I think that's great. I think it's great. Some of it I think is crazy, but yeah, I have to watch my time on social media because I don't like to get too wrapped up in scrolling all the time, right? It's addicting. It's another addiction that you can get addicted to. But I think it has a lot of good it can do for people if you use it the right way.
It really does. Do you have Instagram or no?
I have an Instagram. I do. I probably should give you the address, right? I haven't been, so I'm starting to get more into Instagram. I've used it in the past. It seemed like my social media was more a lot of Facebook. I guess maybe my Gen X. I don't know if the generational thing, Facebook came around and we all jumped on it. But I love Facebook, but I'm seeing value in all these other ones now. Let me give you.
Because I'm a millennial, so Instagram.
Right. My daughters too. My daughters are the same way. It's funny that, the generation thing.
And like my younger brother and his wife, they're what, Gen X? I don't know what's after millennials, but they're more TikTok. It's funny.
Yes. Oh yes. My fiance's daughter is a junior, and my daughters are still, because they're 22 and going to be 21. They still were on TikTok, but Instagram's their favorite. Where it seems like the younger generation, TikTok's their favorite, and they don't want anything really to do with it. Well, Instagram, I guess, seems like the Facebook. It's hard to get my daughters to do much on there.
Yeah, to me, Facebook, I guess it just changed so much. I don't understand how to work it anymore. Like 10 years ago, I was, Facebook genius, and I used to know how to run all the ads. Obviously, I have my own small business, so I needed to know how to do all those ads and whatever. But now, for some reason, today, it's so hard for me to work. Even TikTok is still difficult for me to work.
Oh, I get you. It's very difficult for me, too. I'm not a content creator. I just come up with stuff that I feel passionate about, but nobody's coaching me. I mean, I know I'm not great at this stuff. I'm just doing my best to be genuine and not act like I know, because I don't. All right. Thank you, Angie, so much. I really appreciate your time.
You take care. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of The Bookish Spell. I hope you enjoy our magical bookish journey together. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And feel free to leave a review. It really helps. I'll be back next Wednesday with more enchanting stories and author insights. Until next time, keep the magic alive in your hearts and on your bookshelves.